the rest of that goes.
All right, Mike, where are we starting?
Let's start with Amari Cooper, guys. He had a fantastic season for the Browns this season. He's entering the final year of his contract. As of right now, he's due $20 million on the cap. The cap hit would be $23.8 million in 2024 with the bonus. He's 30 years old, and we know that's when the drop-off for receivers typically happens. Not always, but typically. So if you're Andrew Berry and the Browns, what do you do with Amari Cooper this offseason? Extend him, try to restructure, let him go into 2024 without a new deal? He's obviously their best current receiver, but if you were Andrew Berry, what do you do with Mr. Amari Cooper?
I think in a perfect world, you extend him 1 year through next season for his ages through the 2025 season.
Do you think he'd be good with that?
I don't know. I think he probably would want a longer term if he's going to do that. Yeah, I'm saying that's why I'm saying in a perfect world, I don't want to go 3-4 years with him.
I feel like you'd have to go 3 at least.
I would do it if I could get out of the last year of the contract because the problem is he's getting to the age where guys often go off the cliff, and sometimes it happens quickly. We've seen that a lot with wide receivers and running backs. Now, DeAndre Hopkins, we wanted him at 31, I believe, still had a great season last year. But Amari Cooper has had injuries, as Mike pointed out. I don't know if he just said it now or before the show. Amari's dealt with injuries at the end of both season, but right now the Browns have nobody else at the position that is really starting caliber. And so they've got to have him at minimum for this year. And that's why if it was my choice, I'd extend him for next year, cut the cap number down this year.
Yeah.
If I have to give him a third year, I guess I would do. I'd give him a third year before I'd let him go now. I guess it's the bottom line for me.
I'm not extending him. I let it ride. I play him on this contract. They've already restructured
it's a big cap hit, though.
Yeah, I know, but they've already restructured him once. When they traded for him, they restructured him.
Yeah.
So he's already got an $8 million dead cap hit in 25 when he's not even supposed to be on the roster as of now. So the more that you restructure this, the more you keep kicking that can down the road, the bigger that snowball's going to get.
And they've done that on a number of
And
players.
they have. And it's like, the Conklin deal we've talked about. That's going to be miserable. They've already restructured both guards. Both Teller and Bitonio got restructured. They're going to have to figure something out with Chubb. With this one, with where it is, I know it's a big number, and I know I'm the one that keeps yelling about the cap probably more than anybody, but I don't think you can risk, kind of to your point, I don't know that you want to go multiple years with him. He's coming off a phenomenal year, but, I talked to people at the Browns who felt like he was already on the backside when they acquired him. Now, obviously, he had a monster year this year, but I don't know that you want to keep rolling the dice and taking that chance. Bring him back for 1 year. I'd spend my top draft pick on a receiver or try and trade, although that didn't work out so well with Elijah Moore last year. But they've got to try and find another playmaking receiver to add to that room, and then hopefully, theoretically, that guy would then become the number one when Amari leaves. But I'd ride 1 more year with Amari. You already got to take that $8 million cap at $7.5 million, I think, in 2025. So just bite the bullet this year, pay him his money, keep him. Obviously, you don't want to cut him, and then roll the dice from there.
My father used to always tell me, man, taking a pitch with 2 strikes has consequences. You better go up there swinging that bat because you can't get called out of watching the 3rd strike. The Browns had an opportunity to replace and find Amari Cooper, but you swung and missed. You swung and missed on Schwartz. You swung and missed on Elijah Moore. You swung and missed on Bell. Actually, you got Cedric Tillman, and I don't even know, he ain't looked too good. So if you keep swinging and missing on all these receivers, you could have had the luxury of letting Amari Cooper go because you did a good job in scouting and bringing guys in. Guess what? You didn't. You didn't do a good job at it. So now you got to bite the bullet. Now you have to extend him, even though he may be on the back end. That's just the consequences when you don't hit what you're supposed to hit. It's the same with quarterback. Not only do they need to extend Amari Cooper, they got to go out and find another dude to punt with Amari Cooper. This ain't even a question. This not even he has to be back. Now, you can say, okay, he's a little bit on the back end. I didn't see anything about any of his explosiveness gone. I thought he did a great job with 5 or 6 different quarterbacks. He broke the singles game record for receiving yards. That doesn't mean that he's not on the back part of his career, but it shows he's still productive. Now, my thing is people will point to the injuries. Take it from a guy that's been injured 17 times. I got my first surgery when I was 18. I was still young. If you play the game of football, you are going to get injured. It doesn't matter if you're 30, 22, 21, 25. You're going to get injured and you're going to get hurt. At the end of the day, the Browns are the weakest at wide receiver, and they cannot afford to weaken that position by not going into the season and saying, let's add something to it and sign him to at least a 2-year deal.
G-Bush stole my notes.
I was like, hold on. Yeah.
You got, I mean, literally almost everything that I was going to say. You left a few things out that I had.
There you go. You're
But
welcome for those.
here's where I was going to start. Which position is the biggest position of need for the Browns next year?
Receiver.
Wide receiver.
I think that's easy.
Yeah.
Which position group is there the least depth at? Wide receiver. Which position is most critical to our most important player's success? Wide receiver. All answers to this question point to you have no choice. And I know you said you could let it ride, but Jay, I share your fear of what's coming. I think the years 26, 7, and 8 for the Browns are going to be really difficult
It could
years.
be rough.
And, there's just no getting around it. There is one way to get around it, and that's if you're drafting like the LA Rams. But we haven't done that. That's not our track record. We can't suddenly expect us to start nailing 5th and 6th round picks when our track record is we can't nail 3rd round picks.
Well, in fairness, the Browns have drafted fairly well the last couple of years. It's not at that position.
You can't draft fairly well when you're in the position the Browns are in.
Yeah.
We all agreed that after the Rams won their Super Bowl, it's going to be some lean years because of the trade. I love what they did. They
I don't
went
think
into
we
the
all
lab.
agree, Jay, though. I think people
No,
make too big a
everybody
deal.
expected the Rams after they won the Super Bowl were going to tank.
I
They had no
just-
draft picks.
Yeah, I know that. I just think everybody makes too big a deal about the cap. Where are
No, I'm not even talking cap here.
Yeah.
I'm talking draft picks.
Okay, well.
Because how do you rebuild your team? Drafts, if you have space under the cap,
Yeah.
or if you have draft capital.
Right.
That's the only two ways you can do it. The Rams, I thought, executed this whole thing perfectly.
F them picks.
Right. That's
You look at what they did with those 5th round picks. It may be the best back-to-back 5th round picks that I've ever seen, because they're both not good. They're both excellent players. You can argue Puka Nacua is already a top 5 receiver. So for me, when you ask all these other questions that lead up to the big one, I am so with you on the cap fear. It's coming. The day of reckoning is coming. But what we have to do is we have to look at my look at the window now is 24 and 25. That is the window. The next 2 years for the Browns, it is imperative that they win in that window.
Now, what they could do, Jason, is let it ride this year, see what happens, and then you could always re-sign Cooper at the end of next year.
Because
Absolutely.
He's already. It's not like he's a free agent. We're not saying
No,
should
he's
they
not.
bring Amari
Right.
Cooper back or not. No, obviously you have to bring him back.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, don't touch the contract. Let it ride.
Yeah.
Let him play out
And deal
this
with it
year.
next year.
And if he has another monster year like this, okay, well then we're going to have to revisit this.
Yeah.
But for right now,
If they restructure-
I don't want to keep kicking this thing down the road.
if they restructure, can they get more cap space? If they
Sure.
restructure?
Yeah.
in the short term,
In the short term, but he's already got an $8 million dead cap hit.
At the
so
end.
$8 million is gone from their 25 cap,
Yeah.
even if he's not on the team.
You're saying
There's-
they're better off taking the cap hit on him this year. 24.
Just pay it.
Rather than
And
just
see-
pay it. More kicks
so
down the road.
I
Because
also
you're
think
probably
that-
going to have to restructure Deshaun. You're probably going to do that again.
And that I'm expecting that's going to happen because I don't see how he can carry that big a number.
64
into the season.
million.
It will choke the teams.
So you know you're restructuring that one.
Yeah.
You've already restructured, like I said, Betonio, Teller.
And those all come with a price
Miles.
later.
And,
You're probably going to restructure Chubb too to add.
oh, you have to
You have
restructure
to.
Chubb. You're not paying him $16
So
million.
I think the way I'm looking at it, and then please correct me if I'm wrong, but the Brown, you always look at a window. Teams.
their window's right now. There's no question.
I think their window is next year because obviously it's closed from the 22-23, but based on the Deshaun trade, to me I felt like okay they've got to do it in the first 4 years because all of those can kicks on the cap, restructuring deals, the Pied Piper is lurking. He's not knocking on the door yet, but he's coming.
Well, that all depends in the end on how good Deshaun Watson is.
It does, right? Well, see,
Because
and if he's
you
not
have
great,
a great
they're not
quar-
going to win anyhow.
Right. The Chiefs' window is never closed.
As
It
long as
never
they have
will be
Patrick
closed.
Mahomes, it's
Right.
open.
So,
And you could argue that Burrow as well. I mean, as long as Chase and Burrow are in Cincinnati, I think their window's open.
I feel you can't. This is unique. I do understand when you say you got a franchise quarterback and that the window's always open.
Yeah.
Not in this AFC. No.
Well,
No.
by
No.
window, we don't mean they're going to be a favorite. We
No,
just mean that
you
they're
just
going to
have
be
a chance.
listed.
No,
As long
legit.
as Mahomes is on the Kansas City roster,
They're the favorites.
they're going to be in the top 3 teams to win
100%.
the AFC.
So you're talking about the Browns
Yes,
specifically.
I'm talking about the Browns.
No,
Yeah.
the Browns don't jump into that.
They don't those other teams are positioned at a uniquely strong point because of the fact that they already have those pieces. We trying to get the pieces, right? Their quarterback has already been up and running. We just trying to get our quarterback started.
Yeah.
And so when you look at the Browns, I look at it like, hey, you got next year, and you might have the year after that, because this year was supposed to be it. If you look at what
Well,
they
I
had.
thought it was going to. I don't know about it. I still think 24-25, even after the trade.
I thought this year.
This year was
I didn't think coming into this season that even if everybody had stayed healthy, Chubb and Watson had a better year than we expected, I didn't have them in my top 4.
If
in the
Deshaun
AFC.
Watson had played at Houston level this year, they could have won the Super Bowl.
That is the
without a
biggest
doubt.
if, though. If your
Of
aunt
course,
had
but-
wheels, she'd be a bike.
Well, that's not fair because Deshaun Watson.
What had we seen
That's
from
the
him?
reason the Browns traded for him.
but
They
It
hope to
is,
get that.
but we had a 6-game sample size from last year
Right,
that we
it
knew what he
go-
was now.
Right, but going into this year, it had only been 6 bad games going into this year.
Well, that overshadowed. It tainted my view of things.
And you
anyhow.
can't. And we talked to what's today? We talked to Bernie. You can't underestimate not playing for years. Like that's like somebody being a pitcher,
I
not
know,
pitching
but-
for 2 years.
But gee, we saw it with Joe Flacco.
Well, look, you got to think about it like this though, as well. There's a unique set of circumstances with Joe Flacco, and even with Joe Flacco, we found out that Joe Flacco has some limitations to what he could do.
And they were the same ones he had before.
And so yeah, so
right, but our expectations for Joe Flacco and Deshaun Watson were not the same.
No, they weren't.
The ceiling,
Joe exceeded them.
The gap between Deshaun Watson at his peak and Joe Flacco at his peak is different.
I would give you that, yeah. But I can't really hear the rust argument anymore because of what Joe did.
We were taking the Russ argument like last year. This year,
Right. He didn't get that. To me, he didn't get that pass this year.
No, he
Everybody
didn't.
kept saying,
No.
well, he had a long layoff. No. He played 6 straight games.
He had the
If that
OTAs.
isn't enough to runway to get you back in the air, then you're not going to get back in the air.
So
let me ask you guys this right now. Right now, just off the top of your head, I'm gonna give you the 16 quarterbacks in the AFC that are likely starters this year. Some teams it may not be certain.
For next year.
And you tell me for the next 3 years, would you rather have Deshaun Watson, based on all the information we have right now,
Right.
would you rather have Deshaun Watson or this guy?
Okay.
So contracts count.
Forget the contract. Forget contract.
That's a
There
big
you
part
go.
of it, man.
Well,
That is
There
a
you
big
go.
part of it.
That's a
So we
huge-
just went from reality to
because
fantasy.
that's the world we're living in.
I know, but I just want to base it on just their play.
right,
Just
okay.
their play.
All right, that'd
Just
be
their
hard for
play.
me,
If
but
you can
okay.
take them, just their play. Or they all have the same contract.
All right.
Okay.
Let's
Would-
get Allen, Mahomes, and Burrow right out of the way.
Okay.
We're taking all 3 of those, and
Tua.
no one's even going to debate
Tua.
it. Give me Deshaun.
I ain't no fan of Tua. Give me Watson, bro.
I'm taking Tua.
I think Tua is a product of his receivers.
I
take
agree with
Deshaun.
that.
Okay.
I'll take Deshaun.
I know what Tua looked like before his receivers.
Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, Deshaun.
Give me Watson.
Yeah.
Deshaun. Patriots have nobody, so
Yeah.
he's ahead
So
of that.
give me Deshaun.
Lamar Jackson.
That's
Lamar
easy.
Jackson.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
The Steelers situation. We take
Yeah,
them.
yeah,
we
yep,
take him.
yep.
C.J. Stroud.
CJ Stroud. No question.
Yeah.
Going Stroud.
Dang, bro. Yeah, I got to at this point.
Trevor Lawrence.
After that smoke show. I'm going to take
Give
Watson.
me Deshaun. Yeah, give me
Watson.
Deshaun.
I take Lawrence.
I've never been high on Lawrence.
Nor have I.
Give me Watson. I see him.
For a minute, I turned on him last year. I thought,
Yeah.
okay, maybe this guy is what everybody told me he was.
Yeah.
But he told me again this year what he really
all
is.
them picks.
Anthony Richardson.
Come on.
Give me Deshaun.
I'd take Watson.
Long term, I take Richardson.
Oh,
For
really?
I ain't seen
For
it.
right now,
Yeah.
like if we're talking today,
Next couple of years.
I'll take Deshaun.
Yeah.
But boy, I think that one's going to be
Watson.
a lot closer
Man.
than you think.
Will Levis.
I think he's really
Watson.
good.
Watson.
Watson, yeah.
I don't even know who the Raiders quarterback is, so we'll take Watson there.
Garoppolo.
Yep.
It's Garoppolo.
Yep. Watson.
I'll take.
Yeah, but Garoppolo got benched and didn't play at the end of the
Yeah, he's done.
We don't know who Denver's
I would
starting
still take him
quarterback is.
over-
We'll take him over Denver.
Russ,
The
I'll say
Raiders-
Russ.
Russ. I said Russ during the season, but I'd take Watson.
Watson.
Wait, Russ is done in Denver.
But we got to fit him somewhere.
Whatever.
Okay.
He has to,
Okay, I would say
Watson. Herbert, I would take Herbert.
Yeah, I'd take Herbert.
So
he's middle of the pack.
Definitive.
I counted 8 quarterbacks.
I think I would take Russ. If we're not counting contracts, I'd take Russ.
No, I ain't taking Russ.
Even with his age.
The ones
we're talking about right now.
Okay.
The ones we're in agreement on, Herbert, Mahomes, Stroud, Burrow, Lamar, and Allen. There were 6 that we were in agreement on.
I thought there was another one in there.
Mahomes.
I said Mahomes.
Oh, I thought I missed it.
Mahomes,
Chargers, Chiefs,
Allen,
Texans,
Jackson,
Bengals,
Stroud,
Ravens, and that's it. And Buffalo. So 6.
Yeah.
The 6. I had a couple of so you had him 7th. You had him 7th. I think you had him
Probably
8th.
about 8th.
And I think I had him 9th.
Okay, so that's look, we might ask us at the end of next year, and that could change dramatically.
That ain't actually too bad. That
but here's the thing: it's not bad, but we didn't bring him here to be not too bad.
Yeah.
We didn't bring him here to be 8th in the AFC.
Yeah.
We brought him here to be top 2 in the AFC.
Hence, you better get me 3 receivers.
Hence,
I need all of that.
You can't punt on Amari. You can't. He had. I don't want to call it a career year this year because that would be unfair. Think he had a career high in receiving yards, but he had 17 games to do it. I know he's had seasons where he's had more touchdowns than what he had this year. I think he just had 5 touchdowns.
I'm with Mike. I think it's a career year.
I don't know because I think didn't he have double-digit touchdowns one year or very close?
This is his career ranks this season. So 76 receptions was 6th, the most receiving yards. Receiving touchdowns was tied for 6th, and his yards per catch.
Yards per catch is crazy. 17 a catch.
That's really impressive. I would say this, though. On the yards, he did have a 17th game to get him there.
But he didn't play in the 17th game.
Well, but how many times has he missed a game or 2 here or there throughout his career?
So
I don't know.
he played 15 games this year.
That's nice.
He has played
Jets
at
game
least
too.
15 in all but 3 years of his career.
Okay.
He had 5 touchdowns. The most he ever had was last year, actually, when he had 9.
Yeah, okay. I thought it was a record last year for him.
So last year he played 2 more games, had 90 less yards, 4 more touchdowns in 2 less games.
I mean, it's safe to say this with Amari Cooper. There has been no decline.
No.
Not measurable yet. And if you go off of that information, I think it's in the discussion for a career year. So because of that, I'm even more inclined to bet that it's not going to happen next year. It may happen 2 years from now, but
that's what you're extending him into.
I know it is.
You're
However,
extending him into the cliff.
The way I'm looking at this, if I'm Andrew Berry, I'm looking at my realistic window based on all the other contracts, the age of all my other superstars, where we are and where we're going to be 2 years from now, 3 years from now. I think, look, the window may well still be open in 27. It might be. Or 26, because I think it's going to be open 24 and 25. I think you've got to win in the next 2 years. Maybe it extends to 26. But you touched on the other of my points. The Browns don't have the luxury of not having Amari Cooper on this roster for at least 2 more years because they didn't get it right in the draft.
To this point, they haven't. They have to overdo it. I mean, I'd like to see them go get. We've talked about these free agent wide receivers. We know some of them are going to be franchised, but not all of them. There's 6 really good wide receivers.
Who's the Lions receiver? I read a piece yesterday. This is the guy the Browns are most likely to target.
The Lions?
Is it Reynolds?
A Lions.
DPJ?
What?
DPJ?
That's it.
The Lions.
No, it
Josh
was. I think it
Reynolds?
was their number. He had 850 yards receiving, I think. So call up the Lions receivers. Was it Murphy? Do they have a Murphy?
I think it's about Josh Reynolds.
When I saw
Reynolds,
Josh
I think
Reynolds. That's who it
Reynolds.
was. It was Reynolds.
he's
The
not a
article
number
was,
one by
this
any
is
means.
this is the perfect fit for the Browns.
I don't agree with that.
It talked about his numbers, how he was underutilized because of the other receivers the Lions have, and he was just a guy that he felt fit the Browns skill set and need.
That sounded a lot like Elijah Moore.
Yeah, 850 yardage.
I don't know what it was. Well,
He had 600 yards last year on 40 catches.
Okay.
Now, Josh
Listen.
Reynolds is an Aggie. He's a bigger guy.
Yeah.
He's 6'4".
What do you
runs
know
fast.
about him then?
I mean, he's old. I wasn't there. He's been in the league for a while. He's 28. Was
I don't
drafted
want
in
anything.
17.
I mean, he's fine if you brought him in as your 3rd receiver.
Well, what are the top name free agent wide
the
receivers
biggest
next year?
names are Michael Pittman from the Colts,
Well, I love him.
T. Higgins from
Mike
the Bengals,
Evans.
Who will likely be franchised.
Mike Evans from Tampa Bay, Calvin Ridley from Jacksonville, Mike Williams from the Chargers, and Marquise Brown from the Cardinals. I mean, not all of those guys will get to free agency, but those guys are all huge upgrades for number 2 wide receiver.
Now, if
I mean, Mike Evans is the number 1,
if
and so is T. Higgins.
So 2 things.
And Michael Pittman.
One, the cap is jumping significantly next year. It's going, I think, 240 is the number, and it was around 220 this year. So it's a pretty big leap.
Yeah.
So you can look at that and say, well, you can handle a big contract like Amari. Now, the flip side of those names you just mentioned, if the Browns get in on one of those guys and you have to restructure Amari in order to do it, then I guess you, in that instance, you do it and you hold your breath and hope for the best. And if it blows up on you in 2025, well, you've got one of these other guys to fall back on.
Right. If they're going to play in that lane of the T. Higgins, Pittmans, Evans, then I think the smart move is to do what you said
and let it ride.
Let it ride.
Because then if you sign T. Higgins for 4 years or 3 years, then you have a bridge to get you.
And I would still draft a wide receiver in the 2nd round.
Well, you have to.
But what if you need to restructure him to fit that guy? Now, here's where we're flipping.
Well,
no, you're right. So that is
now you have to restructure.
That is a refinance. That is not. That's a refinance.
And 44% interest.
Yes.
Now, if you sign Mike Evans, that's not going to be a long deal because he's older.
He's older. I think he's older than Amari Cooper.
But I can't believe Pittman are only like 24, 25
I can't believe the Colts are going to let Pittman go. I just can't.
I don't think the Colts are going to let Pittman go. I don't think the Bengals are going to let T. Higgins go. I just don't.
I think
Evans might be the most realistic.
Why would you?
I think Mike, but he's older. I think Mike Williams, Calvin Ridley, and Marquise Brown are probably.
Mike Williams scares the hell out of me.
That's the problem is he's had so many injuries.
He's getting injured take it from him who I seem to have him on my fantasy team every year. I'm like, dang, you out again?
I think
he's on your do not draft list.
Yes, I know Calvin Ridley didn't have an amazing season with Jacksonville. He was good, not great. I don't know what his final numbers were. He was a little disappointing this year.
Just over 1,000 yards.
Okay, so he still had 1,000 yards.
Yeah.
Calvin Ridley and Marquise Brown, who I think both of those guys will get to free agency, those guys would both be perfect number 2s to play with Amari Cooper because they're both speed guys.
Your mantra, your new hat for next year is Operation Overkill?
Operation Stockpile.
Okay, Stockpile. Operation Stockpile. Based off of that, I think you have to draft a receiver with your
100%
first pick, which is unfortunately not until 56 or 58.
Hey, and if
54.
they have to be aggressive, move up if you can.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah.
This receiver draft is loaded, by the way.
I know it is. It's a good, which it helps us.
That's
so maybe that's gives them incentive to move up.
Greg Newsome to move up.
They have to do this coming off season.
Would you say run that back?
There you go.
Run that right on, right there.
I
Run
mentioned that a few weeks ago. Trade Greg Newsome to move up in the draft. I would 100% do that.
Yep, no question.
As much as we're down on Newsome for that last playoff game, he's still a good corner, and there's
he has value.
That could help.
He has
that
value.
would want him.
I don't think he's got a ton of value right now.
You're going
But
to
he
get
has
more
some value.
He has some.
Yeah, I mean, he was a first-round pick, and he hasn't been a disaster.
No.
Couldn't you trade Greg Newsome in a late second rounder to move up earlier in the second round?
Oh,
I mean,
for
I
sure.
think you could do that.
Yeah, you could move up for sure.
Hopefully, you could maybe get
move into the end of the first round.
into the 30s. You know, either high.
We're going to. Are we going to? Well, I don't want to step on that because that's our next segment. One thing, just quickly before we go. I believe that the Browns this offseason have to do at wide receiver what they did last year
100%.
on the interior of the
100%.
defensive line.
Yes, sir.
You have to address that. No more, we like our receiver room. They lied to us when they said that, or they are even worse than we thought at assessing talent at that position.
Yeah, my only concern that they might not do that is they're kind of, they're not going to cut David Bell after 2 years. Especially when he showed a little progress at the end of the year. They're not going to cut Cedric Tillman after 1 year, and they just traded for Elijah Moore.
I've seen nothing from those two guys.
I agree.
They're professional.
You upgrade where you are weakest.
They should.
And if there's a casualty like a David Bell,
they could
so
move
be
on
it.
from Bell.
That's true.
They could move on.
Yeah,
from
that's
I'm good with
Bell's
that.
had 2 years, and even though he played good against Cincinnati, it's
He
a
had
2-year
moments.
track record.
Well, Goodwin's not going to be back.
No.
We'll talk about that one sec, though,
And
so it's Goodwin.
All right.
He won't be
it
back.
is Goodwin, yeah.
All right, guys, we're going to move on.